Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the must not take yourself too seriously and 6'1" since that matters. And what do I even say other than hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode, and I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Eric G. And he's an entrepreneur. He's got a really interesting story. We have similar Asian background, and I'm really happy to have him on the show. He's a creative, he's an entrepreneur, and it's going to be great for all the creative audience out there. So, Eric, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know we connected through Podmatch, and briefly tell people what you do, how you got here, and how you can help the audience.
So I'm basically I call it a life writing coach. And I know those two things seem kind of different or separate, but I started off as a writing coach. Well, actually, I owned an education company for a decade. And through that company, we worked with thousands of students a year. And I was also a writing coach, and I had my own set of students. And I found that the most important thing with writing, a lot of parents want you to focus on the grammar and they want you to focus on all these different things that you learn in school. But I found the most important thing is your voice, like helping people find their voice. And you really can only find your voice if you know yourself. So that's where the life coaching part comes in. And so I've spent the last 20 years studying personality typing. And my book, The Power of Personality, was just recently published a couple months ago. And it kind of encapsulates my method of typing people into different personality types and using that personality type to help them understand what they want more out of their life.
Yeah. And what's interesting is because this is a unique personality typing methodology that stands out from things like the MBTI and the Enneagram, and kind of explain the key differences and the advantages of your method.
Yeah, so the biggest difference comes from, as I was studying them, because, I know the Enneagram and I know Myers-Briggs. I studied Myers-Briggs a lot when I was younger. I tend to notice that they focus on external things like, oh, this person is good at this, or this person talks more, or they get their energy out, or they keep their energy in. I know introversion is like the new big hot word, when you're talking about personality typing. And mine focuses more on why we do the things we do, because a lot of the complaints I got were like, oh, well, I'm extroverted in this situation, but I'm introverted in this situation. And I couldn't disagree with that. That was a good point. My feeling is we do have different personalities, but the way they manifest themselves come from something else that's deeper. And so my methodology focuses on values. And it kind of categorizes, or I want to say categorizes, but it understands people by their core values. And I think values, the difficult part is I think we often assume that we all have external differences, but we value the same thing. And I'm a big believer that no, we value very different things. And when you value those things differently, they cause a lot of conflict. And the whole point of my book is to help people understand, look, it's okay this person values their family. You might value your career more and that's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. Interesting. So different values. And one thing that's also, because you mentioned introversion, and the buzzword or the term is a neurodivergence. And how does this play into your personality typing?
Well, I'm not a neurologist. I know you're a physician, so I don't know the mechanics of the brain, and I'm a big believer in, look, if biology tells me something, then I will believe that, because I'm not going to argue against what's there. My knowledge is mainly through practice And I think with neurodivergence, I know there's different, like there's ADHD and, well, I guess you don't call it Asperger's now. I think it's called neuro or autistics. I'm not going to try to figure out what it's called. But I think, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like sometimes maybe when people are diagnosed a certain way, is if it's not something physical that you can see, maybe it's just you have a different personality than what people are told, than what people tell you should be. I think half the population tends to fit into one category. They seek security and safety, so they're the most likely to be organized. They're dutiful. They're going to be the focus is buy a house, get a job right after I go out of college. Get a degree that's steady and secure, and that's great for a lot of people, but it's not everybody. And I think sometimes when we don't have that same feeling, we feel like there's something wrong with us, and I think that can be a problem.
Yeah, because you touched on a very important subject because it's like you talked about these mantras like go to school, get a good grades, get a good job, house, white picket fence, pretty spouse, 2 kids, car, all these like kind of like and this like and that's like a very narrow spectrum. And so how does this play out in the working world? Because in the West, the working world is all about status. It's who is the loudest, who can pound their chest. So how does this work in the workplace, relationships in the world? Because here in Europe, people are kind of they're more they're less showy than the West. So how does this play out?
It's interesting because I tutor or I coach I don't say categories, but 2 groups of people. I tend to coach a lot of young kids, and I tend to coach a lot of adults who are like, I've had this job for 20 years and I kind of hate it. And I don't know why I chose this, but now I want to figure out what I really want to do. And so it's kind of nice because I get both ends of the spectrum where I can tell a lot of my students who, of course, they're told, oh, get good grades so you can go to a good college. And they kind of have their life, at least for them. I mean, I'm not picking on them. I mean, they're like 12 and 13, but they have their life planned out. And it always kind of ends at like 25. Like 25, at that point, 25 and 26. And at this point, they're married, a beautiful spouse with a beautiful house. I feel like I'm doing a Talking Head song now, but and that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of life left to live at 25. Also, let's be real, don't expect to have a job just waiting for you when you get out of college. And at 25, you're just like, okay, I'm good. And so, I feel like I use personality typing to kind of help people figure out, and maybe you found this, and maybe this is a cultural thing, and maybe it's more common in Europe where people can kind of say, okay, what do I really want out of life? And what really makes me happy? Because sometimes people will be like, well, I just want to make money. And I don't care if I have a job that I don't like, because then I can buy things that make me happy. And I'm always telling my students, like, why do that when you just find something that you really like? Cut out the middleman. As long as you can support yourself, then I think you're okay.
Yeah.
But,
Yes, I was talking with another guest the other day, and we were just talking about the time value of money. And again, the West they use money as status and buy material things and look how great I am, and versus kind of different cultures use money as a tool to help people, or kind of enjoy life a little bit more and give back. So kind of talk about in your book, The Power of Personality, you discuss the impact of personality types on relationships, and how can knowing your personality type improve romantic, familial relationships? A lot of people now are single, and this concept of relationship is very dynamic, and there's so many situations. So how do you address that?
it's funny. That's like the question when I give these talks. And it could be like the most serious talk. It could be like in like Hulu or something, and among the software engineers. And the way, and people are just like, okay, that's great, and I really want to know how to interact with my coworkers better. But who should I be hooking up with? Tell me that. I want to know who I should be hooking up with, right? And it's and it comes from, so the way if you separate people, so I have 16 different personality types that I use, and I know everyone hears, oh, that's Myers-Briggs. Yes, but the way I separate them out is a lot different. And within those, so you have 4 major groups, and then within those 4 major groups, you have 4 types that I use animals to describe them, because animals are fun and they're easy to remember. Anyone who's a fox personality type is never going to forget their fox. Oh, yeah, I'm a fox. So, but if you think about that, like the four major groups, they all value something. They all have a different core value, and I think with relationships, that's important to note, right? If someone's core value is safety and security, and another person's core value is excitement, like visceral excitement and adrenaline, then those are kind of conflicting. And you just have to understand that. Funny enough, those two types actually are going to be the most likely to be attracted to each other because they're bringing something different to the table.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of people who ask me these questions are already in a relationship. And I always take the safe route because I'm like, I'm not going to tell you a theory that is basically saying that you are not meant to be with the person you're with. Because I'm like, is that what you're asking me to tell you? Like, I'm not going to say that because maybe it makes sense theoretically, but that's just theory, right? In practice, I'm always just like, you know what? Just know that if this person has this personality type and you're this personality type, you guys are probably going to conflict on this. And you're probably going to get along like this. And that's going to be pretty consistent. So as long as you're okay with that, then you're fine. If you're not okay with it, then you probably want to move on because that's not going to change and you can't change people.
Interesting. It's always good to like know just kind of like, and then just so that you know which relationships to, are good for you, which ones are bad for you, who's your type, who you're compatible with. Which also brings me to this question of culture, because you mentioned because we were talking and you know um basically we didn't fit in, I'm an Asian born in the States, and I still I don't feel like I'm Asian, and I don't feel like I'm white, so how does this play out like culturally, like people from different cultures and different backgrounds, and how does that influence your personality?
It's interesting. So the group that likes safety and security and strives for that, they make up about half the population. And within that, they're going to be the most likely to be affected by the culture they grow up in. Culture that we grow up in, our family, our surroundings, when we follow those rules, it makes us feel safe and secure. They give us a certain kind of grounding. Other personalities are not so inclined to be tied to that. So it's interesting. So like if you have, I'm just going to be spouting off animal names now, but these are some of the personalities you have, like a peacock. I think people can probably guess what a peacock personality type is like. They're really flashy. They love to dance. They love physical contact. But let's say you have someone who has a peacock personality type and they grow up in Japan, like in a very traditional Japanese household. But let's just say an Asian household. I don't want to just call it Japan. But, like, how it is. Like, there's not a whole lot of physical touching. Like I can't even remember the last time I hugged my mom, which is a terrible thing to say, but like there's not that much physical touch. And so I think they're growing up in that culture. They're going to kind of feel left out. But people are going to be like, oh, but you're like Japanese. Shouldn't you be like this? And they're like, well, okay, well, you're telling me something, but I want to hug people, And obviously you could pick any other culture and flip that around. I know a friend of mine, he's Cuban. And, in Latino culture, there's a lot of physical contact generally. But he's of a personality type, which I call the shark, where he's more just like, not standoffish, but he's like, no, this is my personal space. Respect my personal space. Don't touch me, And so in a way, I don't think culture determines our personality type, but I think it determines how we move in the world of our culture.
Interesting. So yeah, in like, a lot of times, I grew up in American culture, but like, my culture and thinking is Western, but I never felt like, I always felt like an outsider. So in these cases, do you recommend like finding culture? Like, I guess that's kind of like you would like find your environments where you survive, or you feel welcome, or you feel like that's who you are. Is that how you address it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in finding your personality type first. Because when I don't want to keep picking on them, I call them gatherers. So the four groups that I have are gatherers, hunters, shamans, and smiths, right? And as you can imagine, their role in society, right? Like back in the day, and gatherers make up the most of people because we need more people to sow the fields and gather the harvest. I think sometimes, since gatherers make up such a large percent, they can be a little overwhelming with their sense of like, this is our society, this is how it should be. I own a creative space here in Los Angeles, and it's interesting. We have a lot of different, I would say a lot of the same personality type, and they only make up about maybe 10% of the population. But I think it's because people just gravitate towards people who have similar personalities than they do. And it's very diverse. So, and it has nothing to do with, the ethnic background, the cultural background, or anything, the gender. It just has to do with, oh, you value this, I value this. I used to think I was an alien. Now I no longer think I'm an alien. This is great.
Interesting. Yeah, and so kind of rounding it out, how can people, contact you, learn more? I know you do a lot of coaching, and your approach is really interesting, using animals, and it's like very memorable. So how can people, follow you and reach out to you?
So my Instagram handle is the name of my book, The Power of Personality. And you can also take the test. That's probably what is the most interesting to people, because it's about them and everybody wants to know about them, right? And my test is at my website, utopiaproject.com. If you go on there, there's the test. It'll actually pop up to kind of almost like force you to take the test or pressure you to take it, but you really should. And from there, you can get a lot of the information that you'll need, and a lot of more information is featured in the book.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this conversation and just kind of addressing, and it's, ultimately it's about identity, and how you it's so for all the audience, be sure to reach out to Eric, check out his socials, give him a like and follow, and thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me.